Outdoorsmen of Reddit, what is the most terrifying experience you've encountered in the woods? Walking in the pitch black out to a deer stand. So dark you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Heard some circling around me of something large, it was trotting along. No big deal, figured it was a deer. Then it stopped and let out the most bone-chilling howl I have ever heard. So loud it was like it was inside of me. A few wolves howled back in the distance and it ran off. Needed new underwear. I got to tell you homie, from one outdoorsy human to another, if something is circling around you it is 100% always a predator. At that point your best bet is to hope it's only one and not a pack of predators. Eater except in armadillo regions, those bumbling goofballs might circle you without being predatory at all. They're just goofballs. Duck in armadillos man. Place me and a fiend used to camp was covered by a ton of them. Nothing like going to grab some water from the river in the middle of the pitch black night and suddenly hearing what loud rustling coming from just a few feet away. Always terrifying for the first few seconds until you can adjust your eyes and focus on some lil goofball rolling around in the leaves. I was backwoods camping in Canada with my ex. Deep forest, we'd been out there a day or two and hadn't seen anyone. That evening we were in the tent playing cards and heard something in the bushes, making a giant racket. It was getting steadily closer. It got to the area we were in and stopped. We debated what to do but finally opened the tent, both completely freaked out, and found chickens. 3 chickens, en route home to an organic farm we didn't know was nearby. I was surprised I couldn't think of a story for this thread considering how much time I've spent backcountry camping in really remote places, but your story unlocked a memory. Summer of 2020 I took my kid on a mother-daughter road trip where we were mostly camping, for social distance reasons, and because it's kind of our thing that nobody else in the family is interested in doing with us. We'd been driving for almost 10 hours at this point and finally managed to find a halfway decent and occupied backcountry site about 1/4 mile off the road in a section of Sequoia National Forest way up near a mountain summit. We were probably only about 2 miles from the nearest ranger station, but a long helicopter away from any medical facility. A little before sunset I started hearing twigs snapping. Large twigs, more like medium-sized branches were being stepped on and broken. Then I heard it again from the opposite direction about 10 minutes later. It became pretty clear that something large was circling nearby, so I calmly suggested to my daughter that we go hang out in the tent and listen to our favorite podcast on my phone to get away from the mosquitoes, actually to try to give the impression there were more adult humans with us, and at least put one barrier between us and whatever was out there. Finally just before dusk, I heard the movement of something heavy that was definitely located between our tent and our vehicle, so I mustered the courage to go out with a flashlight and investigate because that's when I realized I had left our only weapon, a large hunting knife, in the trunk of the car. Ducking cows. Apparently some local rancher had permission to graze his cattle in that area. I was a bit surprised considering our proximity to a patch of critically endangered redwood forest, but that's Central California for you. Former life as a hydrogeologist studying wetlands I had a few staring contest with a Florida panther. I am pretty sure I pissed myself. Came around a palm bunch and ran into it. We were maybe 15 feet apart. Not sure how long we stared, then he bolted. Tying wetland delineation flags on tree bases, went to tie one on and as I was doubling the knot I looked and there was a coiled water moccasin about a foot from my hands. Eyes open just watching. Delineating another wetland, walking around but preoccupied with looking for a survey flag. Didn't initially realize the log I stepped over was about a 12-foot gator. I tiptoed the duck out of there. And after dark flash flood that roared through camp. 12 of us, 5 of them were sleeping in the canyon bottom. It's amazing nobody died. That was 32 years ago and I still sleep lightly and always pack clean underpants. I grew up in the mountains of New Mexico. I will never sleep in a low spot, like a canyon or along a creek. I will always make camp on a local high. I have seen numerous flash floods and have known multiple people killed in them. I've known about flash flooding for most of my life but a few years ago I saw a video of a guy standing in a dry creek bed when a flash flood occurred. He was a normal adult dude and was actively looking and saw it coming and he barely got out of the way in time. I knew it came fast, but I didn't know it was that fast. When I was about 15 years old, me and some of my friends decided to go camping at a nearby lake. It was a 3-4 hours hike, and the nearest house was maybe 3 hours away. We brought some homemade wine and drank the whole night and ate poorly grilled hot dogs. Life was good. We all shared the tent, so it was crowded as duck in the tent, but we all fell asleep around 2 a.m. At 4 I wake up because I can feel someone running their hand down my forearm. Not that unlikely that someone brushes up against me since there wasn't any space to move around in the crowded tent. But this is the arm that is facing the tent. So someone touched me from the outside of the tent. I sit up and get instantly horrified to see that all my friends are sound asleep in the tent with me. I put on my deepest voice and shout, "Whoever the duck you are, you need to leave." And a manly low voice answers me, "You should pack up your stuff and leave," not threatening or aggressive. Just calmly and in a dead kinda way. By now all my friends are awake and are just looking at me. No words, just pure horror in their eyes. I say, "Okay, we will go, but you need to leave. Hurry up." When we get out of the tent, this man, who is ducking huge BTW, has taken the little rowboat that was laying at the bank and gotten into it and is just sitting in the middle of the lake and watching us pack up our stuff and trying to get the duck away ASAP. We had to walk around the lake at our way back and he was just sitting there watching us. We never went back. Edit with some context. This was 17 years ago in a rural Scandinavian country. We have a free to roam law, so we were not trespassing. We knew our way around the small town we grew up. Everybody knows everybody. There have been no people missing and or found dead. Never. There hasn't been a murder in generations. We told our parents, who at first tried to calm us down, and they said that we were probably overreacting. But the way he caressed my arm before he told us to go was not normal. When we told them everything and what he said to us, we were told to never go back. After COVID we all met up and the subject came up and we tried to do some digging. There are no houses or cabins anywhere near. The lake is way too small to fish in. When he was sitting dead center in his little boat, there was maybe 60 feet to land on all sides. No one has ever seen this man before or after. As a Boy Scout, we found a bunch of scorpions in our Adirondack. We ran outside screaming our heads off, and then lightning struck a tree like 20 yards away. We turned on our heels and ran straight back to the scorpions. Many years ago, when I was about 14, I was hiking deep in the woods behind my house with some friends. We were miles away from home, further than any of us had ever gone before. And we came up to the edge of a clearing, and a little further down the tree line, we saw a lump of clothes underneath an old deer stand. We got a little closer and we could make out legs and arms and boots. They were wet from rain and had been there for a while. Obviously, our first thought was that it was a hunter who had an accident and fallen out of his stand and was dead. We were freaked out and it took us a little bit to get up the nerve to get a better look. It wasn't until we were practically on top of it that we realized that it was a dummy. We had wandered all the way up to the edge of a big Christmas tree farm's property, and the dummy was part of their decorations from a haunted harried thing they did. They must have forgotten about it when closing up for the year. We had a good laugh, but we were all scared crapless for a few minutes. A few years ago, a teenager on the next road over went missing. They said he was autistic and ran away from home on foot. We're in a very rural area. They had cops and people walking in the woods for a couple weeks looking for the kid. Never found him. The following summer, I found a jacket, some empty Pepsi cans, a knife, and a lighter at the base of a tree in the woods on our property. They came and looked again, didn't find anything else. It was confirmed to be his jacket. I work in the bush and sometimes spend months out there. Most terrifying was seeing a bear start to circle me right as the helicopter pilot radioed me to say he couldn't get to my location because of the weather. Luckily I had a shotgun with me, and eventually the pilot got down to me, but yeah, sitting there in the sleet while watching that grizzly slowly and sneakily try to cut around my position in the fading light was absolutely terrifying. The whole time I was trying to come up with possible ways to keep from being outflanked and to keep visual contact with it in case I had to shoot it. This was in the late fall, so the bear probably hadn't put on enough fat for the year and was looking to supplement it. Spooky stuff. I was backpacking with my dog and about 12 miles from the road and trailhead, so pretty far from people though popular enough that other hikers might be around, though we saw no one all day. About 2 a.m. my dog started this really low deep growl and wakes me up. Turn on my headlamp and see his teeth showing and he's right on top of me. I hear heavy footsteps, black bear moose. Common near the tent. I leash my dog so he doesn't tear through the tent and the footsteps move further away, but keep circling my tent. All of my food and toiletries are hung in a tree in a bear bag, nothing in the tent to draw a bear's attention. I clap my hands, something is still slowly circling, not something a moose would do, and a bear might if he wanted food, but I've got nothing and a really big dog with me. I decide to step out of the tent with the leash in one hand and bear spray in the other, yelling hey bear. The footsteps stop, dog's nose is in the air telling me to look right, but nothing in my headlamp that I can see. Didn't hear anything run off, but it's quiet. I give it 5 minutes or so, get back in the tent, and it starts up again, slowly circling maybe 50 feet from me. Maybe an hour later, I hear the footsteps wander off into the woods. At dawn, I take the dog and the bear spray and start looking for tracks. I find a clear path in the leaves that had been trampled, but no tracks. The dog's nose is on the ground, and I follow his lead, and he follows the loop around our campsite. We finally see a few human footprint, not shoe tracks, a regular size, not Bigfoot, bare human foot. Plus, yup, a human turd and toilet paper. So Mayhole was wandering around the middle of nowhere, near the tent and circling my tent for an hour or more, and left a dump for me to find. Eater to reply to common questions themes in the comment replies. 1. Hiking and backpacking is incredibly safe. I've been doing this for decades, and this is the only weird experience I've ever had. The hiking community is incredibly friendly. The trails have become more crowded since COVID, and you're definitely seeing more people on trails, and less trail courtesy, litter, leaving dog poop bags, pooping too close to the trail and not burying your poop. Also, I was very far away from civilization. Bad guys don't hike 12 miles to do harm, and I'm pretty sure they don't carry toilet paper. The only incident that I know of was of an emotionally disturbed person stabbed 2 hikers in a Adirondack shelter somewhere in the southern part of the Appalachian Trail 5 or 6 years ago. I've hiked thousands of miles without a single dangerous human interaction. 2. I don't hike with a gun. They are too much weight to add for me on long multi-day hikes. I'm hiking in the Northeast. The biggest predator to fear are black bear, coyote and bobcats. All of those are afraid of humans, especially this far from civilization. If I were an empty lion, grizzly of wolf territory, I would carry a gun. Moose are scary and huge, and are not afraid of anything, especially in the fall rut period when testosterone kicks in. You need a really big caliber gun to stop a moose from charging, and that's a heavy gun. I've crossed paths with a moose 3 or 4 times, but they are so big, you can usually hear them crashing around long before you see them. I've never had a stare down, but my plan has always been that bear spray would disorient them enough for me to find someplace safe. The biggest predator, humans. But see point 1 above. 3. What I think happened. Much as I'd love to say it was a young Sasquatch, a skinwalker or a Wendigo, I'm guessing it was a disoriented backpacker that left their tent to crap and got confused. I was hiking a somewhat popular long loop trail, and I believe someone was probably hiking the opposite way and stopped somewhere of trail ahead of me. I was backwoods camping, not at a campground. Regulations are that you need to be 200 feet off the trail and into the woods to set up a camp. So they could have been a quarter mile ahead on the trail and I wouldn't have known unless they were noisy or smelly enough for my dog to let me know. The most likely explanation is that they were heavily under the influence, got up to crap, and got lost on their way back to their tent, and found my site. They approached my tent and realized they were wrong, and tried to find their way back to their camp. Then they heard my dog, and me yelling to scare off a bear, and either thought we were a risk to them, or too lit to answer back. The circle around my camp was several hundred feet, and my tent wouldn't be visible for most of the loop. I was camping between several spruce trees. 4. I didn't get back to sleep. I couldn't get back to sleep. It was late September and sunrise was around 6 a.m. When we found the poop pile, I relaxed. I really didn't think there would be anyone nearby as we were in a very tough area to get to, requiring going over 2 mountain summits from my direction and 6 other mountains in the other direction. The total hike was about 40 miles I hike. We were going to be out for 3 nights and 4 days. After I realized it was a human, my first assumption was that there was a lost hiker. I texted a friend that does search and rescue in the area to see if there were any reports of lost or overdue hikers. If there had been, I would have had my dog try to follow that trail to see if I could have found their campsite. As no one was missing, we broke camp and went on our way. 5. Yes, he was the best dog ever. I lost him about 5 years ago. I knew that dog would die for me. Several years after this incident, I got diagnosed with cancer. I've been in remission for several years and things look good. This dog was so in tune with me that he knew how crappy I was going to feel before I did. He would walk with me to the bathroom and sit right next to me as I puked my guts up. He'd walk me back to bed and let me rest my hand on his back if I needed a little help walking. Everyone has a heart dog, he was mine. I swear he knew I had cancer before I did. He used to sniff me right where my tumor was located. I still get teary-eyed thinking of him. Rest in peace, big guy. People are always a bigger concern to me than wildlife when I'm out. People are scary. We all heard the stories, and not a damn one of us believed it till we saw it. In the mid-90s I was stationed in Grafenwohl, Germany. Well out on the ranges we were told don't overreact if you see people in the tree line, they live here. Haha, scare the new kids, good one Sarge. And one day, afternoon rifle range time, we finish up and start cleanup. About a dozen people ducking materialize out of the woodline begging for food. We gave what we had, exchanged hellos and watched them melt into the forest. Ducking surreal. I had a somewhat similar experience. Camping illegally off a popular highway about 1/2 mile in, middle of the night with my girlfriend. I hear footsteps in the middle of the night and stand up in my tent and watch this person circle my tent for about 5 minutes. They had a flashlight and seemed to be looking for something. All of a sudden they just took off running. I stood there the whole time clutching a pocket knife ready to kill this guy if he tried to come in. I figured he was lost and thought this was his tent but wasn't sure, so was looking for some identification before coming in. That's actually the last time I went camping now that I think about it. Absolute silence. No wind, no animals, nothing. 1 second there were all the sounds of nature, then nothing. Lasted for a few seconds that felt like an eternity. We have property in the mountains of NC that used to be isolated enough that you didn't hear anything except the sound of nature. There's more development these days on the other side of the ridge, but it's still pretty quiet. The first time I ever heard a fox scream though, man, I will never forget that sound. I was maybe 6 or 7 and kicked the side of the tent to wake up my dad. As kids were inside the tent, my dad slept under the stars beside it. He was excited about it, explained exactly what it was and how cool it was that I got to hear it, so it made it a little less scary. Same property, but in recent years, it being so absolutely quiet in the dead of winter that you can hear snowflakes hit the ground. It's not creepy but is definitely unsettling, like having earplugs in but still hearing whispers. I went camping with a friend once, in some remote woods that were owned by his family, completely undeveloped. In the middle of the first night, we heard this unearthly moaning sound, like there were angry wraiths in the woods all around us. Ducking terrifying, unlike any animal sounds we'd ever heard. Turns out some squatters had built a little shanty in the woods, close to where we camped, and they had a few Irish wolfhounds that roamed the woods at night. They probably caught our scent and were nervously circling around us, not wanting to get too close, howling to each other. That sound is unnerving if you don't know what it is. Was in my 20s growing pot in the coastal mountain range of California. Found a trash bag partially buried with a human torso missing its hands, feet and head. Did you phone the cops? Did you ever find out who the victim was? That's incredibly sad and unbelievably terrifying. He was growing pot. Most likely not. I know California is legal, but there is a lot of areas where illegal grows still are a thing, and having cops around could lead to which don't care if pot is legal. I'm also in California. And if you smell pot in the woods, you turn around and leave in the opposite direction. Not unheard of to stumble upon a farm being guarded by people with automatic weapons and no reason to not take you out. A lot of cartel grows out here. There's a reason game wardens have body armor and machine guns. I was wild camping in the middle of a dense forest and at around 2 AM I was woken up by a girl crying not too far away. I didn't know what to do so I just waited. She carried on crying for like 15 minutes and then I heard a guy say, "Oh come on now, let's go home." I didn't hear anything else after that. It scared the hell out of me. Were you not tempted to investigate before hearing the second voice? I'd definitely be that curious one who gets killed in a horror film lol. I had a similar experience and felt like I had to investigate. I was backpacking on the in Maine years ago. Myself and several others were in a lean-to, just turning in as it got dark. I thought I heard a woman yell something. I asked the others but no one heard it. I almost dismissed it but I just had to check, so I set off down the trail with a flashlight. I found a hiker about 5 minutes later, really distraught. She had been in a town resupplying and this aggressive guy had really scared her, so she set off on the trail to get away, hoping to reach the lean-to, gave up as it got dark and yelled in frustration. We went to the lean-to by flashlight. She was worried the guy might follow so I hiked south with her for a couple days, leaving some warnings and trail registers about the guy. Do not go looking for the crying child in the woods at night, especially in the Appalachia Mountains. That's how you become either dinner or just plain dead. Is there a story here I'm missing? Cougars can mimic the sound of a crying child. If I recall correctly they can also sound like screaming women which is just as eerie to hear in a mountain. It's a common tactic in various parts of the world used by bad people. Growing up in a third world country before I moved to the US, there were gangs that would play a baby crying or a woman sobbing on a boombox late at night. When people came out of their homes at night to investigate, they would rob and murder them. My grandparents drilled it into our heads at a very young age. Do not open the door late at night, ever. Hey, thanks for making it all the way to the end you absolute Chad. You're a legend. If you enjoyed the video please be sure to like and subscribe for more of Reddit top content. I'll see you in the next video you beautiful people.